AI is given the traditional influence in the spreadsheets. And even in the modular piecemeal, because it's not constantly and we'll make it happen. We're talking about like pen and paper, maybe Excel spreadsheets and saying, well, they're going to work together here. Resonating with the customer. The customer sees in case of
But the all we were trying to do was when you were there,
rather than
I don't know, women in construction as well. Share that. Very busy. I think everyone is more out of this thing. Like, how would you it is very expensive. We're going okay now. I don't know. Next year I'm going to break down a large family. Yeah, like the design I think they give Carlos they're happy they said right here more contractors working on that hard So we have head of engineering now, and he's actually very good now. He's actually delivering a lot of farmers out with Jacob. But it's people that it's like anywhere, like I chat to after.
push this university.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Hill, and I'm the CPD Director with Engineers Ireland. And I've also got responsibility for the STEPS programme, which is an education outreach programme aimed at primary and post-primary students. And we engage with a number of volunteer engineers all around the country. and other professionals working in engineering-led firms and libraries, colleges, etc., to ensure that we're getting children both introduced to and then inspired and encouraged to consider engineering and indeed any degree or apprenticeship towards a career in STEM. So, firstly, I'd like to just say thank you very much to Barry and to May and Suzanne and all the team in CitA. For giving me the opportunity to chair this event this morning. They're always fantastic events, the Digital Transformation Series. And I know all the other events that are coming up that CitA are organising are flashing up there on the screen. So firstly, just housekeeping, if you wouldn't mind just making sure that your phone is on silent. In terms of fire, there's no fire drill scheduled for this morning, but as you can see, there are, I wouldn't even have to point them out because I've never seen so many fire exits in the room. There's a number at this end, and we can also go out this way if the real deal happens. We're definitely not going to burn soon. So, you know, as many of you are aware, every year STEPS runs, part of the STEPS program is the Engineers Week Festival that we run in late February or early March. And this year, during that, we launched a report. It was entitled Engineering 2019, a Barometer of Profession in Ireland. And it was launched by the Minister, Joe McHugh. And this is it. If you haven't seen it, you can download it from engineersweek.ie. So we went out to employers, we went out to colleges. There's so much information in this. Now, I don't have time to go into the stats in it. And I know Roisin, our first speaker, is going to talk about some research that she has done into the skill shortages in the industry. So, but as I say, you can download this and it's really worth a look at. So, in terms of the STEPS program, the other three key pillars, what we're doing with kids, the first program is called the Young Engineers Award. We just launched that last year, and it's about it's a competition for third and fourth class students, and it's about them finding a challenge in their community or their school and coming up then with solutions of how they're going to resolve it. It's team-based. It's something that we see is very scalable and very, I suppose, relevant to the construction sector because they often pick something, you know, that is something to do with building in their community. The other big program that we run is actually happening this week in TUD Tala and a number of other colleges and universities. So there's about 14 colleges and involved in this, and it's a week-long immersive program for TY students. And so they go into the college and they get a really great experience of the diversity of engineering. So they might have a day in chemical, a day in mechanical, a day in civil and structural, and they do site visits, industry visits, etc. as well. So that's absolutely so important because, as you know, TY, after that year, they're going to be making their subject choices for the Leaving Cert. And, you know, the demand for that programme way outstrips supply, and we have great ambitions to scale that and to build on an industry version of that. ESB already run an industry version of that programme. It does take a lot of resource, of course, but it's hugely beneficial to the children that do it, and we can track them also longitudinally, and showing the data that we have is showing that it is having a significant impact on choices. So as the representative body of the profession, we are doing our utmost to promote engineering, and our Director General, Caroline Spillane, is a member of the construction sector group, which was established to ensure regular and open dialogue between industry and government and to impact the successful delivery of the National Development Plan. And she's also chaired the National BIM Council, which Alan is also on, to develop the first roadmap for the digitalisation of the construction sector. And one of the recommendations of that was the establishment of a Centre of Excellence for BIM. And the Council are currently working on realising that. And we, Engineers Ireland, has also formed a BIM group. A gentleman called Diarmuid Mullen from ORS is helping us with that. And we're seeking other people to join that group. So if you are interested at all, you can contact my colleague, Richard Manton, our policy officer. So now to this morning, we have a packed morning, and the calibre of speakers is absolutely outstanding. So we're going to learn a lot. I am absolutely sure of that. So how we're going to work it is, first of all, Roisin will speak, then Alison, then Mark, and then Harry. And then we'll call them all back up here for a collective Q&A. And following that, then Robert Moore and Oliver Dawkins will speak about the 3D data hack and how data can be used to shape the future of the city. And then Barry Macaulay is going to provide us with a BIM State of the Nation, and Alan will make some closing remarks. So, lots to look forward to. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker now, which is Dr. Roisin Murphy. Roisin is a senior lecturer in the College of Engineering and Built Environment of TU Dublin. She has a degree in economics and history and a master's from UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School, and a master's and a doctor of business administration from Heriot-Watt University, which specialised in strategic planning in construction professional services firms. She's published extensively and authored several industry reports in collaboration with professional bodies. And these would be relating to employment opportunities and future skills requirements in the construction and property sectors. So Roisin's going to set the scene on how to solve the construction market imbalances from the economic context, and will explain to us why collaboration is key. Roisin.
Keep my watch here as well to make sure I stick to time. Thanks very much, Dee, and good morning, everybody. My role this morning here is to set the scene, as Dee has already said, in terms of the current labour market within the construction industry in Ireland. I have solving the labour market imbalances, information, collaboration, innovation and incentivisation. I'm not even sure if incentivisation is a real word, but I think it sounded good. Brexit wasn't a word 5 years ago either, so I'm happy to press on. My function this morning, as I said, is to provide an economic context and an examination of some of the key headline data pertaining to the construction labour market in Ireland. And I'll start by showing some of the baseline indicators. On the left here you see from the economy as a whole, on the right the construction contribution to these baseline figures. In terms of output, we're doing very well in Ireland as a whole, with 6.7% GDP growth recorded in 2018, 6.6% of which was related to the construction industry, valued at just over €20 billion. In terms of employment, we are doing very well in terms of trends pertaining to our overall labour market. Our unemployment rate down to 5.4, edging ever closer to our natural rate of unemployment, which is anywhere between, depends on who you listen to, between 3 and 4.5%. Construction unemployment are those who identified, those who are currently unemployed but identified as having previously worked in the construction industry, is down to 6.7%, which is another very positive trend for construction, because between 2008 and 2012, 1 in 2 people who became unemployed had actually come from the construction sector. Construction labour market is very difficult to define and to outline because it's so complex. There's so many workers involved in the sector, and measuring the quantum of workers is not as easy as you would think. The CSO classification, in fact the European classification for construction employment, it involves direct employment, literally on-site employment, and that stands at just over 145,500 people at the moment. When you include indirect employment, people working within the professions and indirectly to construction, it's estimated that you can add an additional 40% onto that, so bringing the total up to 203,700, or 8.9% of overall employment within the country. Just to put that into context, that 6.3% is comparable to the European average for proportion of workers working in the construction sector. The final indicator I have noted here is pertaining to prices. When we're looking at the labour market and we're looking at shortages in the labour market, obviously that has a critical impact in terms of tender price indices in Ireland, and that can be seen by looking at this particular figure, the bottom right here, 7.5% estimated tender price inflation at the moment, construction tender price inflation, vis-a-vis 1.1% consumer price inflation overall. So from an economic perspective, we are coming at it from a very positive recent performance and future outlook for the economy as a whole, with growth continued, forecast to continue in the next number of years, and construction playing a key part in that. So just to put this into context in terms of the trends and as a precursor to looking at the impact of the severity of the fluctuation within the construction industry, I've mapped here the construction output, which is the green line, the value of construction output, and the purple here represents the 12% of GNP over these years. It's generally accepted that for an economy of our size, with the existing infrastructure of our size, that a sustainable level of construction output is somewhere between 10 to 12% of GNP. So the purple line shows you the 12% of GNP. The green shows you what the actual situation is. So it doesn't really require a huge amount of explanation or analysis to see the severity of the downturn from 2007 onwards, but also to see where we are now. We're at about 8.6% of GNP at the moment in terms of the value of construction output. So this severity in terms of output is reflected in terms of employment as well, which has given rise to some of the issues we're currently facing. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But before I do, let's just have a quick look to see who our construction workers actually are. On the left-hand side here, we have what we call our construction family of trades. These are direct employment. You see that electricians aren't there because in terms of the SOLAS classifications, they're actually not in construction. But we do know, obviously, that we have an awful lot of people employed as electricians. And the right give an indication of some of the professions involved in construction. So it's a complex labour market to analyse because of the type of information that is publicly accessible, but also given the number of players involved, and of course along the whole supply chain within the construction project delivery as well. When we look at the trends pertaining to employment, direct and indirect employment, this figure shows you where we currently are. About 8.9%. There's a slight divergence here because the earlier figure was seasonally adjusted and the figure I'm using here isn't. So if you're picking up the difference between the 8.6 and the 8.9, that explains why. Or it's probably too early in the morning for you to have noticed had I not just raised it with you anyway. So you can see again the trend in this regard. The downturn there between from 2007 onwards in terms of both direct and indirect employment has had a really, really huge impact and is a consequence of where we are today with the skills shortage. When we take a further examination in terms of the composition of the labour market, there are some interesting findings here, and I apologise for the stereotypical blue for boy and pink for girls, but they were the only illustrations I could find to make my point here. So when you break this down, we also see not only is it a complex market, it's a labour market, there's a huge number of players, which makes it difficult to estimate, but there is also another very stark reality. There's a severe shortage of females working within the sector. When you go down, as I tend to do for just enjoyment in the CSO data pertaining to labour market stats, you'll see that the construction sector proportionately has the lowest proportion of females than any other sector. Okay, so when you're looking at things like agriculture, forestry, fishery, they have proportionally greater number of females than construction do, and many of other sectors that have slightly more females. But construction is noteworthy in terms of the lack of diversity from a gender perspective within the sector. The two side by side here are looked at Q4 versus Q2. Q2 2007 represents the peak of construction employment. So again, quantifying the complete the decimation in terms of construction employment between peak and current. And this is current, it's not trough. So you can see that there's a significant difference here. When you look at the trends of construction employment overall versus employment within the economy overall, the green reflects the economy, and looking at the left-hand vertical axis here for the scale there, and the right-hand relating to construction. I put this up purely so you can see the trend. So the employment within the economy overall did reduce, but you can see by the purple line there the comparable in terms of the extent of the drop in construction vis-a-vis overall employment. Okay, so I think it makes for stark viewing there. And you know, the impact of this, of course, is that given the level of the downturn, we have a couple of consequences of this. Not only do we have an increase in emigration, which is a very personal thing that affects families. We have people moving out of the construction sector. We have people retraining in other areas. We also have a reduction in the number of students wishing to choose construction education programmes when they finish school. So the reputation of the sector as a secure, ongoing, sustainable source of employment then becomes affected, and it takes some amount of time to address and change that perspective, and I think we're seeing that at the moment. One of the pieces of research that I've done in this regard was on behalf of the Society of Chartered Surveyors, and the purpose of this report, that was in fact published last year, was to determine and quantify the extent of the shortage, in this instance for surveying professions. I've put a summary here for quantity surveying specifically, wherein you see the horizontal line there represents total numbers nationwide of people undertaking quantity surveying degree programmes at that time. It covers the period 2018 to 2021, which is broadly aligned with the 4-year honours degree programme required to be eligible to become a chartered surveyor. We targeted a single senior person in every QS member practice of the SCSI, and they answered on behalf of their organisation in terms of, based on 3 scenarios of economic growth, how many people they were going to take on at every level. And I was able to compare the supply side, i.e. that the throughput from the 3rd level system, with the demand side coming from industry directly. I have to say the 3 scenarios of economic growth were very, very conservative. I normally do that. The pessimistic was a 2% growth, the median was a 3%, and the optimistic was a 4% per annum growth. So you can even see the optimistic figure there is actually very, very mooted in terms of the actual growth that has occurred. But bearing in mind it goes through to 2021, growth probably not likely to continue at the 6.5% that it is now. So 1,700 of a shortage just for quantity surveying projected between now and 2021. So very, very serious in terms of the delivery and the capability of ensuring that we are able to deliver on time, on budget, things both in the private sector, projects in the private sector, but also in terms of the rollout of the NDP over the 9 years that are left on it, and the €116 billion expenditure. And I remind you to think back to the tender price indices that I showed in an earlier slide at 7.5%. Much of the research will show that a significant portion of that is resulting from pressures in terms of the construction labour market and availability of skilled labour. So that's just an example from the quantity surveying side. In terms of the direct employment, another study published last year in conjunction with the CIF this time identified some of the factors that are shaping and impacting their own membership there. Quite significantly, 86% of respondent firms said there's not sufficient skills available, so a considerable number there as well. And 81% of respondents said they do employ tradespeople, but 71% of those said they actually do not employ apprentices. Now, that's a really, really critical finding from this report. There's several reasons why. Some of them were that legislative arrangements were too onerous. Others were that there's a residual uncertainty in engaging and employing an apprentice because of the 4-year cycle and the uncertainty as to whether the workflow would be there. And that was a key thing. Of the 71 that do not currently employ an apprentice, 46% said they previously did, but now are not doing so. So that's just some of the key trends in that regard. But these two reports aren't on their own. There's a huge number of reports that have been published pertaining to the skills shortage, and Dee has outlined the recently published EI report that noted, correct me if I'm wrong here, 6,000 opportunities for qualified engineers and nowhere near enough graduates coming through the system to meet that. The SCSI have also in the report identified that there is a minimum of 2,000 in terms of a shortage of surveyors, but could be as high as 3,900 over surveying professions overall, based on the optimistic, so to include land surveyors and property surveyors in that. The ACOM have recently published a report. 40% of respondents to their report say that the skills and talent is the single largest factor affecting construction firms. The RICS found a similar figure, slightly higher. Turner Townsend found something similar as well. 65.5% of the regions surveyed within their global report identified skills as being the single largest factor impacting their membership. So much so, as we know, a number of professions have been added to the critical skills list, including M&E engineers with BIM capabilities, QSs and construction project managers as well. So I hope that goes some way to set the scene in terms of, look, what does our construction labour market actually look like? Who are they? Who are the players? And what's currently going on? And importantly, looking at the trends and the impact of some of those trends. We also need to know what causes them. And I don't need to tell you what causes them, so I'll rush through this slide fairly quickly. Obviously, we have what I've already mentioned in terms of the pro-cyclical demand for employees. We've got pro-cyclical demand for construction programmes as well, and sometimes from a third level perspective, we can't flex up and down very quickly, and that causes another kind of chink in the process as well. There's a complete lack of diversity within the sector. We're not tapping into our labour force as effectively as we could. There's a poor reputation in terms of the security of tenure of employment within the sector, which is acting as a discouraging factor for entering into it. Emigration and the use of subcontract labour in particular, thus not taking on direct employees or apprentices, is a key thing. The net impact of that, of course, is that we're going to have wage inflation, tender price inflation, and it does have a significant impact in our ability and our capacity to deliver our much needed infrastructure in the rollout of the NDP. It also has an impact when we're putting a value of 116 billion in the expenditure. In that alone, of course, this is the public sector, it's the private sector as well, but in terms of the value for money that we can get. Also, given the reputation, we have insufficient inward migration because of that residual uncertainty about job security going forward. So the extent, the speed and the depth of the downturn in terms of construction, the demand for construction labour is having a really long-lasting impact. So what do we do about it? Well, I'm excited to hear from some of the other speakers that are coming up this morning in terms of solutions and how we do make the industry more attractive to people entering into it and looking at innovative ways in order not only to deliver and design our curricula, but also to demonstrate the variety of work that is involved within the construction sector. And I think that can be very much emphasised in what we're going to be hearing about in just a few minutes. From a personal basis, I think it requires a 4-stage process. I think firstly we need information, collaboration, innovation, and that word incentivisation. It kept coming up with a red line underneath it. I was convinced it was a word, but hopefully it will make it there now, even if it isn't already. What do we need by way of information? We need to be able to quantify accurately the shortage. We need more data pertaining to labour market trends. As I said, we have so many players, so many people involved in the construction labour market at the moment, and sometimes the data pertaining to the numbers of people working is less than perfect. So we need to have, we need to be able to quantify it. We need to generate a greater awareness of the wide-ranging opportunities that are available, the career advancement available within the sector. We need to know what the stakeholders require to facilitate it in terms of addressing the shortage. So we need knowledge, we need information, we need market intelligence, and we need to do it given the fragmented nature of the sector and the structure of the industry in terms of the very, very small number of large firms and the huge number of small firms. We need to collaborate. We need the stakeholders to come together to create and build momentum. There's great work being done at the moment in terms of creating an awareness of the opportunities within and demonstrating the attractiveness of construction as a career opportunity. And we've done really well in that, and we need to continue to do that. We need collaboration to ensure we've got industry-informed curriculum from both undergraduate, postgraduate, and from a continuous professional development perspective as well. Collaborate in terms of funding opportunities to deliver in terms of technology, and we should be using technology as not only should not only be collaborating through technology, but also to drive technology implementation across all stakeholders. In particular, I'll highlight here SMEs, who sometimes may not necessarily have the funding to invest, and therefore particular care should be taken to ensure that SMEs, given the proportion of SMEs within construction, if we want that transformation to happen, SMEs are fundamental in that. We need to be innovative. And I repeat, I'm interested, dying to hear what other speakers have to say in this in terms of curriculum design and delivery. We also need to take a strategic approach. We need to take a strategic approach to technology within the sector. We also need to take a strategic approach, and organisations need to take a strategic approach to manpower planning within their own organisations as well, not to perhaps ensure that they are using their own existing resources, those 200,000 people, more effectively and more efficiently and more productively as well. We need to benchmark ourselves against best in the class. Again, some of the examples that we no pressure, but we're benchmarking our own innovations against what we're going to hear. And perhaps that does require a level of subsidy in terms of driving innovation. So we do start to think and act a little bit more creatively. It is a change. It does require a change overall, and sometimes we do need some incentives in order to make that change. Again, a huge amount of progress has been made over the last number of years, but we need to continue to highlight the job opportunities, the varied career opportunities, and opportunities for advancement within the sector. And we perhaps need to incentivise companies to take on apprenticeships. One very positive development in this regard is the shared apprenticeship programme that's been piloted at the moment, whereby an employer doesn't have to hold on to the same apprentice for the whole 4-year duration, and I think that's a very positive step forward. In terms of technology and the subsidies, we need to look at funding opportunities to ensure that the training and the investment that needs to come for technology is put in place. We also need to look at lifelong learning to incentivise people to continue the existing workforce, to continue in lifelong learning and upskill, particularly in the area of digital technology, and in the implementation and the rollout of the roadmap. That's going to be really, really important when you look at the age profile of our existing labour force within construction, and also looking at the duration of the career potentially in construction. We need to look at CPD and perhaps investing in that as well. So I feel like even my voice has gone now because I'm talking so quickly to get through these. Hopefully that's given you an overview of where we currently are and the extent of the shortage, and given you some kind of sound bites and what we should be thinking about in terms of collaboration and being innovative in the way we do things. So to summarise, I think what we need to do is we need to quantify the extent of the problem, need to get a little bit more market intelligence in that regard so that we can collaborate amongst all stakeholders to identify solutions. We need to think outside the box, perhaps be a little bit more innovative and benchmark against other initiatives that are taking place elsewhere. But we have to realise that it may need incentive. We probably do need more government funding, and every stakeholder probably can put a hand up to that one. But I think it's absolutely critical that we do so in a kind of a strategic fashion, such that we're building and we're addressing this labour shortage now with a long-term perspective, so that we can generate a sustainable construction labour force, so that we don't have the severity of the downturn going forward. And I think a strategic approach to future planning now is absolutely critical in that regard. I will leave it at that, so thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Roisin, for setting, you really did set the very challenging context of the challenges that we're facing in the sector, but great to hear some ideas coming forward as to how we can address them. So I'd now like to introduce Alison. Alison Watson is a land surveyor and the founder and chief executive of a social enterprise called Class of Your Own in the UK. She created the innovative Design, Engineer, Construct accredited learning programme for secondary school students, supported by the UK's leading companies, professional bodies and universities through the Adopt a School scheme. And Alison was awarded an MBE by Her Majesty the Queen in 2018 for her services to education. And she has represented youth and learning on the 2015 to 2017 CITB Council and led on the recent BIM for Education Research and Development project, which focuses on improving the teaching of digital built environment subjects in both the secondary, further and the higher education sector. So this morning she's going to speak to us about schools of the future, the delivery of a 21st century curriculum for industry needs. I'd like to welcome Alison up to the podium. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be back here. I can't believe it's 5 years since I was talking to CitA at the Smart Collaboration Challenge. I totally agree with Roisin. It's got to be strategic. You know, I've been at this now for 10 years. This is our 10th year. In 3 days, we are 10 years old, a Class of Your Own. And I just failed to see where 5 years has gone, never mind 10 years. And I think when it goes that quickly, you kind of see where have we come in 10 years? Where have we come in 5 years? And we're still having the same conversations about skills, about our great industry. I'm going to play you something that hopefully will work, number one, but give you this little bit of sense of where we were then and where we are now. Okay, we had sound, but it's just music on the background. So I'll actually talk through this. Alan Hogg got in touch with me a few years ago. You probably all know of the Smart Collaboration Challenge, and said it might be fun to have a student team from secondary school take part. And me being the person, I was like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds like great fun. So this is a school, King Egbert School in Sheffield, who had just started. These are Year 10 students, which is 14 years old. And they just started our Design, Engineer, Construct programme. And we said, OK, for our collaboration challenge, we're actually going to go from concept to set out of a community building. Now, they're chatting away behind here, and we don't have any sound. It's not a big deal. We can share this anyway. But basically, these students are one class of design engineer construct, year 10, and they were given this challenge to design a community building using digital tools from, as I say, survey of a piece of land. This was in a site that was the old school building just across the way from where the new school is now. So they had a brief, they had an end user. These guys were acting as grown-ups, I suppose you could say. They're using Revit, and when we were actually presenting on the stage, one of the funniest moments was they did their presentation. 5 of the project managers came across to present, and every round of applause, it was standing ovation, and everybody sat down and said, okay, open the floor for questions. And towards the end, one of the chaps in the audience, I think he was an architect, said, I love the way you're using Revit. How have you found that? You know, it's so difficult. And Ahmed said, oh, well, it's just a tool. It's like PowerPoint. And the whole audience burst out laughing. And they weren't laughing at him. They were laughing about the irony of a child speaking about Revit as just a tool like PowerPoint. And I thought that was really quite profound, the way that children actually get into digital technologies. You know, we were talking to Mark at the time at Ulster. We were talking about Minecraft and the use of Minecraft for a better opportunity for the built environment. Not just Minecraft to be a vlogger or a blogger or a games designer. And the Revit to children is the, you know, grown-up version of Minecraft. There's no difference to them, except that Minecraft, as it stands as a game, i.e. not the Ulster University version, is a game. And I think we're deceiving ourselves to think that children who play traditional Minecraft are going to be inspired to come into the built environment. They're inspired to earn millions as vloggers. So don't kid yourselves, people in the audience. Minecraft, normal, equals vlogger, games designer, multimillionaire. Minecraft a la Ulster equals fit for purpose for built environment for younger children. So we did this 5 years ago. How many schools since in Ireland? Big fat 0. How many schools in England? 100. Launched in Dubai, launched in Scotland, we're about to launch in Lithuania, we're about to launch in the Middle East. So I'm going to escape that and hopefully click on here. This is when you need a 14-year-old because my technology skills are absolutely rubbish. But I'll go to there, and where do I go on here now? Slideshow, from current slide. Okay, so that was 5 years ago. The Adopt a School programme was basically that every school who does design, engineer, construct needs the support of industry. We need to be collaborative. We need industry people like me going in and not pitching up on stage and going, careers in construction, they're really, really cool. No, get my theodolite out, go outside, let's do some Pythagoras theorem, i.e. setting out. Because let's face it, you know, I work. I am not a born speaker. I'm terrified of 300 14-year-olds. It's not where we see ourselves naturally as land surveyors. But if I'm going to go in with a class and say, okay, I'm going to show you how to do some setting out, I'm going to show you the importance of topographical surveys, I'm in my comfort zone, which is the easiest. So it's kind of doing what you do in schools and not putting pressure on to be the careers advisors of the future, because we're not. And unfortunately, the UK government is asking people like me to do that at the moment, to pick up where, I suppose, government left off or didn't achieve. I'm going to be very, very careful how I phrase my words here. But the strategic approach is absolutely necessary, and we inspire young people. The technology inspires young people. If I went in with a drawing board, I don't think I wouldn't last 2 minutes. So just a little chat through the curriculum itself. It starts at 11 to 14 years old. And the children are basically given a brief of design an eco classroom to teach the local community about being more sustainable. So the whole agenda at the moment around climate change, plastics, Greta the heroine, fantastic, bring it on, because our children are delivering that kind of sustainable thinking through the built environment. The eco classroom is basically around teach the guy on the end of the street who's too busy to take notice of climate change, teach the little old lady who daren't turn her heating up in the winter because she's afraid of the cost of heating. It's about teaching local community people, bringing the community into the school for a real project, and this is real to the children. They really believe they're solving a major problem through building design and through good building design. So they're looking at sustainable materials, they're looking at renewable energies, they're looking at all the people who contribute to that design, engineering and construction of a sustainable buildings. They're working to BREEAM standards, and they're loving it. And why are they loving it? Because they own the project. They work with the client. It's kind of grown up in 11 to 14 year speak. When they get to 14 years old, they can opt to do level 2. Now, Jess, on the left-hand side here, is now 18 years old. So this was her in year 10. She entered a competition. We run a competition every year. And this was a real school in Parabongo, Uganda, who needed a school for 3 to 18-year-olds. The 20-year war, unfortunately, had obliterated the community over there. They were all orphans. Their mums had been raped and killed. Their fathers had been shot. These were children who needed an education. And it was such a terrible story. I said, well, let's us build a school. Our children design in eco classrooms. We can do this. And Jess, her team in Sheffield won the competition that year. 4 girls won this competition. They went down to Ara. We looked at the structural detail, the passive performance of this building that they designed. We flew the head teacher in from Uganda, and he cried in front of the children and said, this is the school I dream of. Now, Jess has moved on to greater things now. This is her level 3 project in A-level. She's looking at clash detection. She's looking at improving her structural model. This is the house that she designed for her year 3. She's looking at energy efficiency of the building, doing solar analysis, looking at energy analysis, and she's going to be a civil engineer. She's got a conditional offer at the University of Leeds. And here we have Chris Jackson. So Chris has just started at Sheffield University last year, structural and civil engineering. Now, back in that video I showed you, 2014, Chris was part of that original team that entered the Smart Collaboration Challenge. This is his building that he worked with Arapon when he was 16 to 18 years old. And the building, the old part of the building, is the Little Mesters Studios that were Victorian buildings in the centre of Sheffield, the heart of Sheffield. And he put on this modern design on the front, and he couldn't get a model of the original building, so he went out and measured it and drew it in Revit. So everything he's modelled himself, and then put on this fantastic extension. Now the great thing about this, and if you want to go and have a look on the table, Harry, I'm sorry, I've stolen your table. It's Avril's fault. She told me to do it. Thank you, Avril. But there's some examples of his work on that table. But even just this is the industry impact. His roof on the front of this building was actually sloping into the old building. It was sloping down the roof. And it took one person to come around and go, wow, great design, Chris, but actually we'd never do that. You need to take the water away from the building, not into the building. Transformation in 5 minutes through industry intervention. Strategic is the key. We've got loads and loads of different awards that we've just launched. So I've set up our own awarding body now because I'm so sick and tired of awarding bodies, profit mongering, putting stuff out there that isn't necessarily appropriate for school kids. So we set our own and given these entry-level awards from the Parabongo Challenge to Thames Tideway. You can never have so much fun with poo in your life. Trust me, the Thames Tideway tunnel and waste, children love it. But we're not talking about where the waste goes. We're looking at the impact that a clean river can have. What can you design on a clean river that you couldn't design when it was full of, yes, that. We've just done an off-site manufacturing challenge, so structural off-site manufactured timber for a university building. That was a great challenge. That went from 11 to 18. Hotel Underground. James Bond retires, wants to become a hotelier. Here's an underground station in London. Turn it into a hotel. What are the building services challenges with that? And ironically, we had a university 6 weeks into this competition. This is 4 years old now. We had a university call up and say, this is too complex for children. What on earth are you trying to do? I said, well, you better get up with them because they've been in it 6 weeks and they're on it and they're doing it. So if you want to help, go in there and learn something. I'll not name the university concerned. In terms of curriculum design, these are the key principles. I absolutely know that DEC delivers on all these things. We are having successful learners. They are confident beyond parallel. The fact that they can stand on the stages of our ICS and they can stand on the stage of the House of Parliament and so on and speak confidently about their projects, we're bringing confidence through, and it's one of those soft skills or meta skills that are now being called that are sadly lacking in our school children. They're responsible citizens in the way that they care first about their planet. And it's really, really interesting how they come at design. It's with sustainability absolutely at the outset. We don't worry about cost. We know that the cost will return on investment in the future. So BREEAM, they're looking at BREEAM Outstanding. And they actually challenge, why aren't we doing that across the board? Why isn't the construction industry working to our standards? Which is quite interesting. And in terms of effective contributors, have them on your team, you'll soon see what that's all about. Maths has always been a major issue. PISA tests, we are way down. In Ireland, we're way down. In the UK, we're way down. We've got Singapore top of the leagues all the time. And why is that? I believe, because I was the maths student at school who went into banking when I left school because nobody told me about the construction industry. Thank goodness I met a civil engineer when I was 24, or I would still be in boring banking. Sorry to all the bankers out there who are watching this on the stream, but I was absolutely bored rigid. Met a civil engineer, put in front of a theodolite, the rest is history. I jacked in my job that day. But mathematics. Is there any wonder that children don't see the point of mathematics when nobody's telling them what to do with it? If I said Pythagoras' theorem to your average 12-year-old, they'd say, the guy's been dead 2,000 years. What can he tell me? You know? But Pythagoras is setting out. It's that simple. Get the children outside and set out a building. That's Pythagoras' theorem. It's doing something with it. And some of these complex theories are so abstract, so theoretical, the children sit there and gawp at the screen and say, I am never going to use this. Tell me otherwise. And the sad thing is that many maths teachers who've never had the opportunity to enter the world of work, and particularly construction, they don't know what to tell them either. But look around the room here. We've got circles, we've got squares, we've got area, volume. You could sit in this room for a week and not cover all the maths that you could do in this room alone. We actually had to write a maths programme for teachers because some of the teachers who were teaching DEC were very afraid of the maths that might be involved. I'm not a maths teacher, what does this mean to me? So we wrote a programme to help teachers and basically took out all the maths and said, that's how you teach it, and this is how it applies. And this is Scotland, benchmarking for numeracy and mathematics. By S3, by the time you're 14, you should be covering some of this stuff, as in discuss mathematics in the real world. When do children get the chance to experience the real world? Well, in DEC they do, because you guys come into the classroom and tell them what the real world is all about. And this is a recent report done by Heriot-Watt University. We've also got a report from Salford University, evidencing the fact that if academics and postgraduates and undergraduates get into the classrooms of design, engineer, construct, it's in their interest too. I challenge Heriot-Watt University students, if you can explain what you do, whether it's architectural technology or engineering, if you can explain what you do to a 12-year-old, you really know your subject. So they took the challenge. And my goodness, they've had some impact. The report's on the desk as well, and feel free to have a look through it. But Heriot-Watt University now send their students directly into our classrooms to help our students and indeed our teachers learn. These are some of the pathways. I think this mirrors absolutely Rasheen's slide on where are the skills that are lacking. Because our children are mostly going into civil engineering, probably 50% going to civil engineering, building services, digital engineering, I call it the BIM engineer, the BIM technician, but either way they're taking those jobs. Construction management, architecture, technology, architectural technology. Who'd have thought? I mean, kids haven't heard of architectural technology, but our DEC kids have, because they see the absolute benefit of the technologists. Geospatial surveying, I sat on the boards for Trailblazers for level 3 and level 6 geospatial apprenticeships. I am so pleased to see that. And yet I had 3 boys who sent me their CVs in recently at 16 years old for the geospatial apprenticeship at 16 years old. The CVs were absolutely chronic. Nobody's helping our children with CV writing. They're brilliant at what they do in the classroom. They can't articulate that in a CV. So now we're writing a programme to help teachers and children learn how to write a technical CV. I think we're problem solvers. I think that's what I'm trying to say. If there's a problem, we try to solve it. Just some case studies. Ollie Milnes, also at Sheffield, King Egbert School in Sheffield, apprentice CAD technician, civil engineering, Arup, starting his degree hopefully next year, and this is his ambition. No idea at 13 years old what he wanted to do. How many children like that? How many of us in the room still have no idea what we want to do when we grow up? I don't intend to grow up. Medicine. How can we put construction with those fantastic careers that children traditionally choose? High achievement, medicine, law, finance. Here's medicine. Eliza said, I can save more lives as a civil engineer. So she's now studying civil engineering. She did DEC for level 1, level 2. Sam Boone, he wanted to be an architect. Now, some children who come into the DEC programme at 11, 12 years old all want to be architects because they've heard of an architect and they've heard of a builder. I'm going to be an architect. Sam was going to be an architect. Now he's actually he's in university now, building service engineering. He was actually introduced to the Queen by the RICS when she came to celebrate the 150 years very, very recently as Britain's great talent. Nothing to do with singing on stage, although I think he can turn a tune. And this is Lauren Cunningham. Now, Lauren is a bit special for me. She is me when I was at school. Wanted to go into finance, wanted to do something with mathematics. I'm going to let you just digest her achievements so far. So she was at St Ambrose Barlow, great school in Salford. Really recommend any of these schools coming across. We can happily organise a visit. So now you've digested that and her little life. This is the text that she sent me when she was 19 years old in January this year. Apparently social mobility is a problem as well in all our countries. I think this demonstrates social mobility at its best. Even our teachers, the greatest barrier, and maybe you need to get this on your slides, Rasheen, is teacher fear. They're afraid of the built environment because it's actually not what they know. It's not just hammers and, forgive me, buckets and spades. It's also digital. And the teachers look at this in design technology. I think over here is design communications and graphics. They look at construction studies and they go, hang on, that's not the construction industry I know. That terrifies me. So go, don't worry, hold a hand. We'll take you through it. Now, this teacher just won the Institution of Civil Engineers IC 200 medal. And he won that for the inspirational way that he's been teaching young engineers coming through. It's the first non-civil engineer in all this time to have an award from the ICE. He's now working for me. He's helping other DEC teachers to have the confidence, newbies, to have the confidence to take the leap and see what the built environment can do for them. Similarly, because we've got such a dire lack of teachers are just not coming through now. I mean, I don't know if you keep an eye on what goes on in England at the moment, and teachers leaving in droves, teacher stress, teacher depression. It's terrible, because I remember my teachers being the most inspirational people ever. Why are we not looking after our teachers? There's something wrong. So we said, okay, industry, you're inspired by teachers, you're inspired going into the classroom, help. We've put a 16 to 20 week programme together. We're actually taking teachers like Fadi in Dubai. Ironically, he did his architecture at UCLan, University of Central Lancashire in Preston. And I was chatting away to him and suddenly went into this fantastic northern accent. I did my degree in Preston. Oh, why did you like that? Really, you did? And he's very articulate and he's in Dubai. But he's a northerner at heart. And it was absolutely wonderful. And I said, would you be interested in helping teachers by undergoing a teacher training programme or a trainer training programme? He's doing that in Dubai now. We've got the one of the lead BIM engineers from Atkins, who's now becoming one of our teachers. He's in Norbury High School at the moment, working with all the girls over there. It's our 10th year. This is what we're going to be doing in the next 10 years. The DEC for the World's Infrastructure releases in Singapore in October. There's a very, very good reason for that I'll come into. But we're looking at road, we're looking at rail, we're looking at Hyperloop. We've looked at Hyperloop, we've done it. It's really, really quite exciting. We're looking at stadium design, hospital design, social infrastructure. So this is a whole new curriculum that comes out from Design Engineer Construct this year. The best programme, built environment specialist trainers, industry-sponsored teachers. Industry's now saying, can we help you by sponsoring a teacher so that all these other teachers can be helped? Fantastic, bring it on, absolutely. You pay their wages, let's get them into helping more teachers understand our industry. We're doing special needs mapping. We're making sure that all our resources are absolutely fit for purpose for any children, because we have amazing children with special needs, dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, who are doing the DEC programme and they are thriving. They are at university. They are getting great jobs. And when you talk to engineers particularly, and you go, oh, I'm dyslexic too. My God, really? Let's look after every child. It's equitable education. The Expo Challenge, in conjunction with Heriot Watt University, launches in September. We've got Decking International Schools. Reconstructed is a mixed reality app that we're actually bringing the site to the classroom so children can go on and off-site whenever they want to. We've got Deck Ambassadors, our ex-students who are now going back into the classroom. I've worn the T-shirt, I can help you, 11-year-old, better than anybody. We've got the STEAM Awards being released for, this is BGE for Scotland, but 11 to 14. And a dedicated learning programme for platform for educators where we can go online, we can Skype, we can interact with you when you can't get into school. And this is my favourite slide because this is the Future Infrastructure Challenge that we've just done. We took 4 schools and said design a Hyperloop station from your town to another town. So Edinburgh to London, London to Edinburgh, Sheffield to Edinburgh, Farnham to Edinburgh. These 4 students have been working on this project quietly for a year. In teams of 4, I think we've got a 5 and a 3. But either way, these small teams have been working on this project. We brought them back to London just a few weeks ago. We put them in the offices for one day in WSP, Arup, Roger Stoke Harbour, Turner and Townsend. And we said, okay, you've been modelling Hyperloop stations in your hometowns for the past year. Now we're going to give you a new challenge. As a hackathon, you've got a day to move it into Singapore. There's all the geospatial data, get on with it. They went Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. The team, Drummond Community High School, now goes to Singapore with me to see the site in October. They are the engineers of the future. Never been so exciting. 2 girls, 2 boys. Do I need to make that clear? I don't think so. Let's get over the diversity problem. You can help too. We're bringing it to Ireland. I really, really look forward to that because where innovation starts, we've got decking schools. Thank you for listening.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the Q&A there. And next up, we've got Mark. Mark McCain is course director on the BSc Quantity Surveying and Commercial Management programme at Ulster University. And he's also co-founder of BIMcraft, along with David Comiskey from the Architectural Technology and Management programme and Tim Hegarty from Advisory Consultants. He was chair of the BIM Regions Northern Ireland from 2016 to 2018, and he's been very much involved in the dissemination of best practice in BIM since 2012. So Mark's presentation will provide a background on BIMcraft and some recent developments and his vision for the future. Mark, thanks very much.
Okay, thanks very much for having me here. This will be fairly brief because Alison's almost stolen my thunder there with some of the issues about Minecraft. She's introduced you to those. So we are currently investigating ways of developing our Minecraft modification of our Minecraft mod called BIMcraft, Built Environment Information Modelling. Craft is what it stands for, and it really takes Minecraft and adds some BIM related features and some real life challenges and constraints to the Minecraft platform. How many of you are aware of what Minecraft does or have children that have played it? There's always an assumption that everybody knows what it is, so I'm going to just in case, oops. Let's see, how can I get this to play? Oh. This is what you can do with these chunky blocks of Minecraft. Culture Tech is an organisation that works with schools up around the northwest of Northern Ireland, and they've modelled some of the main buildings or sort of milestone buildings that you would find as tourist attractions around Northern Ireland. And then they've done this with some of the school children up around the Derry, Londonderry kind of end of Northern Ireland. So that's Belfast City Hall. Obviously, it's not on a big green field, but you can see the level of detail that you can get to, even with these effectively 1 metre cube blocks. Great cranes there, Harland Wolff. And other people are doing these sorts of things. If you go digging, you can find all sorts of buildings and structures that have been modelled in Minecraft. But those are just a few of the examples that others have worked on. So, just to give you some stats on Minecraft, since the beginning of 2016, there's been 53,000 copies of Minecraft sold per day. There's over 100 million copies have been sold, and the pocket editions, the ones that you can play on mobile devices, are the most popular. But if you go to the PC version, as of earlier this week, there was over 30 million copies have been sold. Now, if you go to Ordnance Survey Northern Ireland, all of Northern Ireland has been modelled in Minecraft, or is available in Minecraft. And I know from talking to Alan earlier in the week that Ireland has its topography completely modelled as well, and all of Great Britain is available as a Minecraft version. I'm not sure if you were involved with that, Alison, but there's a nice bit of land surveying that has been undertaken by somebody. So, you know, the professions can see, and Alison's actually mentioned already, the link between Minecraft, digital construction and BIM, and the professions. The problem can be that not everybody, or the children don't make that link, or are not going to make that link, because Minecraft is used in the classroom, certainly in primary schools and in secondary schools, to enhance the teaching of all sorts of subjects, from religious education to chemistry. And if you go to the education edition, my website that's available for Minecraft, you can get lesson plans and all sorts of material to support teachers at those levels. My own boy, of three, the middle boy, used Minecraft to draw up a Jewish temple for a religious education project at school. And the level of detail that he was able to put in there was fantastic. This is a particular shot of some planning engagement with the local community to revitalise an area in, I can't remember which city it is, but it was somewhere in the Netherlands. And because Minecraft's so accessible, community can come in, try to model up their ideas of what they would like to do to regenerate the area, and it's a way of engaging with stakeholders. So there's all sorts of ways. Now, how did is Minecraft going to help, make young people want to choose built environment careers? I know it was my love of Lego and mathematics and graphical design, technical communication at the time, that took me into a career in the built environment. But one thing on its own in isolation isn't going to make a difference. It needs partnership. Just repeat what everybody's been saying. Collaboration needs to. You need people that know what they're doing, going into the classrooms and helping out the teachers. The teachers are too busy delivering their own curriculums. They don't have time to learn new skills. So without external support, there's going to be no difference made without programs like Alison's there. And our Minecraft Minecraft mod is a great tool, but the only way that you can have any effective outcome from that is by people taking that tool and using it in the classrooms. We don't have the resources to do that. It does rely on industry support and working together. So these are just some of the just based on Minecraft by itself, there is collaborative work in 3D modeling, virtual reality applications. There is a HoloLens version of Minecraft. I don't think it's been supported any longer, but you can look it up on YouTube, and it's amazing what that was able to do. We can still do it with the help of IT experts that are in that field. And the Ordnance Survey type mapping. With our BIMcraft modification, we can now think about planning, town and country planning, as well as actual planning of the construction work and the actual building. Sustainability issues are built into the BIMcraft mod. Health and safety issues, health and safety executive fines for not complying with various rules, and if a wall collapses, then you'll be fined as well. Structural stability is built into it. You can't just build anything. You have to have a foundation, obviously, before you can build a wall. If you build the wall too high, it'll collapse, those sorts of things. Comfort levels, sustainability and costing are all built in with the mod. I don't need to repeat what Roisin's been saying, but just to re-emphasise, this is an abstract from the Farmer Report and the Federation of Master Builders from 2016. The problem that you have in Ireland is reflected in Great Britain and Northern Ireland. You can see his projection there from 2016 to 2025 is suggesting the skills gap increasing from 150,000 to near 250,000 in the UK. An undergraduate dissertation from last year, the findings reflect very closely the findings that you were presenting earlier, Roisin, so we'll not go into that any further. But 92% of Northern Irish employers were struggling to recruit skilled staff, and they were having all sorts of problems because the people that they were recruiting didn't have the required skills, but were being asked to do the work that they were not capable of doing, and it's causing delivery problems and quality issues. I'm sure you've all Twitter accounts, a couple of tweets that came in earlier this week. One from Construction News, a young man called Jonathan May was extolling the requirements for employers to embrace digital solutions. So it's worth having a look at that in the Construction News from Monday. And then on, I think it was Tuesday, the Building Magazine released a report of a recent survey, again reflecting very closely what Roisin's been talking about, where only 7% of 16 to 18-year-olds were considering the built environment as a career choice. Roisin would maybe know what that should be if we're going to make any difference to the skills gap. Initially, I thought 7% is maybe not too bad going on the percentage of the gross national product, but I think it's going to have to be substantially more than that to make up the gap that we're concerned about. So, construction industry is changing, education is changing. The BIM Academic Forum and Higher Education Academy produced a report in 2013 that provided a framework for universities. A lot of them are adopting it with various degrees of success. I think Barry's going to be mentioning that later on, so I'll not dwell on it. There are GCSEs now in construction. I'm not sure what the equivalent of that is. That's for 13 to 14-year-olds. But there are GCSEs, which is essentially quite similar to the sort of thing you're doing, only you're doing it in much more detail and much more challenging. And in education generally, as I said earlier, they are using Minecraft and iPads and tablets to try to enhance the learning curriculum and the learning experience for all sorts of different subjects. And that's why Minecraft isn't going to do the job that we need it to do on its own. It does need external support to make the linkages between the type of challenges that you'd be undertaking in Minecraft with the sorts of challenges that are faced in the built environment. Feedback from BIMcraft so far has been incredibly positive. That's not been the issue. The issue has been the resources in terms of rolling it out. We've always envisaged having some kind of challenges and games, and I think that's going to be talked about again a wee bit later on. But you could see we're traditionally primarily aiming at primary school children, probably P6, P7, year 6, 7 at primary school. But it's got the opportunity to scale up, so you could probably have a challenge that's really just focusing on visuals and aesthetics, and then you could add on an extra layer of complexity with the structural aspects, health and safety, sustainability issues, and you'll see what I mean when I play you a short video. Morgan Sindall have sponsored BIMcraft in Scotland, and they're rolling it out to various schools as a social corporate responsibility agenda. They have just agreed to continue to support it for the next 2 years. We've also, when we get the opportunity, we take it into some of the primary schools in the north, and there's some great activities that are rolling out of that, and the youngsters have really enjoyed participating in it. We've been reaching out to Minecraft mod developers and platform developers. Blockworks is one of the top developers, one of the largest developers of Minecraft-based platforms. They're very keen to work with us. They've given us budgets to develop the platform for the educational edition version. The redevelopment of the original BIMcraft in a Java world, we're getting a wee bit technical now, but to develop the BIMcraft marketplace map, which is something that people could buy. It's a bit like the Apple App Store, only it's for Minecraft apps, and it would make the platform much more accessible. One of the problems that we've had with BIMcraft and Morgan Sindall is getting it actually installed on the school systems, because they've got so many virus checks and systems that it's almost impossible to break through those barriers. It took a lot of work, and it shouldn't need that amount of work to get these sort of games going. And they can develop those Minecraft, the BIMcraft things into augmented reality and virtual reality. And then to engage, we need to develop some sample projects, develop a server for the competitions that we just talked about. Competition sounds simple enough until you get into the logistics of how you're going to actually deliver it. So for that type of environment, that type of gameplay, you need to set up a server, and it's not particularly cheap. And then roll out some live workshops. But to say, we need people to come to us, who want to be involved, and maybe put their hand in their pocket in terms of sponsoring some of these developments. So if anybody would like to get on board, please have a chat with us as soon as you can. Apart from that, I just have a short video that I want to play for you that demonstrates some of the features of BIMcraft as opposed to Minecraft. So we've created a little townscape that has some existing buildings in it. So you can see there's a health centre there, stroke hospital, there's a nightclub, there's some apartment blocks, and different types of infrastructure. Within the townscape, there's maybe 3 greenfield sites, and this is where the town and country planning, the infrastructure planning aspect comes into it. So you're asking young people to think about what type of building might be, needed or valued within the existing townscape. There is a wee narrative that plays through this, but I'll just sort of talk through what's going on. As well as seeing from the outside, you can walk through. Some of these buildings have been really well developed in terms of, you go into the nightclub and you can see that it's set up like a nightclub. There's a bar and a dance floor and that kind of thing. The hospital's set up that way as well. Once you've picked your site, you have to put a foundation in before you can start to build your walls. And before that, you have to make sure that you've picked health and safety equipment for your worker. So you have to have a hard hat, high-vis jacket, your site boots and overalls. And if you go on to the job and you start to work without your safety equipment on, you get a fine. Okay, you get a penalty. There is an electronic resource, a kind of educator's book that comes along with this that explains some of the characteristics of the built environment that's pitched at primary school level. Explains the difference between buildings, civil engineering, mechanical, electrical type areas. And then it goes into the different professions and specialisms and some job roles that they can move into. Explains different types of building and the difference between insulation and the difference of insulation in a building will make to comfort levels. So once you've got a foundation on there, you can build up to 7 or 8 layers or courses of block, and then the structural stability starts to give away, and you have to add some more structural support. Now, we don't have big long beams, but we do have blocks that are that regard themselves as structural beams, so you have to put some steel work in order to support the wall before you can build any higher. We've developed some customised blocks. As you can see by the look of them there, they have an insulation layer in the middle to differentiate them from solid blocks. We keep track. I'm a quantity surveyor by training and profession, moved into project management 15, 20 years ago. So I've always appreciated the value of money, so I had to have a quantity surveying aspect and built into this. So it does keep track of the cost of each of the blocks. It keeps track of how much time, multiplies it by an hourly rate. So you've got a full budget for your material and for your labour. So the longer it takes you to build this, the higher your budget. So one of the challenges at primary school level would be you have a budget to complete this in. If you do dig a hole and then you have to fill it in again, you've changed your mind, you want to redesign it, the costs keep building, okay? You don't get any credit if you delete something that you've already put there before. Okay, there's wee tools that allow you to take the internal temperature of the buildings when they're completed. If you've used insulation, you're going to have better comfort levels at the whenever you test it at the end of your building. Now, the blocks that you're going to use are going to be more expensive, but in terms of whole life costing and the comfort levels and that kind of thing, you're going to get better scores. So they realise that from engaging in this sort of challenge, it's not just as simple as you would maybe think at that age. You do have to make choices. You have to make choices between capital cost and operational cost and whole life costings. And I think you've probably seen enough there, and I'll bow out of that. But as I say, we do want to develop this to make it more accessible to various platforms, to make it more usable. We need people to reflect the way Alison's built her model of stakeholders going into schools and using these sorts of tools. I hope that's a complementary resource. It's aimed more at primary school children who engage in Minecraft more. Once they get into second, third, fourth year at secondary school, they tend to be moving away from Minecraft type games. So hope that's food for thought.
Brilliant, Mark. Thanks a million. It's a brilliant idea, and I saw there is a paper on BIMcraft and Alison's programme of works that Alan and Barry Macaulay wrote. It's on the CitA website. So next up we've got Harry O'Neill. Harry is Strategic Business Manager at Celebri, and he's using his industry experience to help educate businesses on best practice for their QA and QC procedures. with Model Checker and its rules-based functionality. And Harry's going to speak to us about development, but even more so the accessibility of low-cost or no-cost tools and how you can make them much more accessible to students, particularly at third level. So thanks, Harry.
Thank you very much, Dee. I think as we're having some issues with audio, I never put videos in my presentations, and sod's law the time that I do, and it's got a lot of talking in it as well. So I won't bore you with myself trying to talk over it, because I'll no doubt just blab on. But yeah, for those of you that don't know me, as a quick introduction, if you can't see me up there, then there's a picture of me up there as well. I'm the Strategic Business Manager at CitA. So we've been looking a lot recently into how we're owned by the Nemetschek group. I think we're 16, 17 brands strong now. There's 15 up on that little graphic at the bottom there. But there's some other companies that no doubt you know. If you don't know who CitA are, we're involved with rules-based sort of QA procedures, so quality checking of IFC models within a workflow to check against building regs, standards, whatever it is that you might want to check for. I've put together today's slides together just based on some research we've done recently. So I've teamed up with the guys at Bluebeam in Los Angeles. They've got a great educational program, and they do a lot of work on the educational side of things in the States. So we've been talking to Milwaukee School of Engineering. We had an initial WebEx conference that you see a screenshot from in a second, and I tried an American accent as well, and I was told borderline offensive. So I'm not going to try it again today. But we were talking to them because they had a conversation with Bluebeam about a competition that was coming up. It was called the VDC. So that's the Virtual Design and Construction competition. It's held in Reno. And it's kind of a big one-day event that starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. You get about 6 months to prepare for it, and you get a load of design challenges chucked at you. And I think there's 3 main ones throughout the day that you've got to come up with a solution for. And so we were talking about how can we as a software vendor make a difference and make our software accessible without getting involved in the politics of what do they use for this task and what do they use for that task, because we're all trying to sell ourselves and our software to them. So in the discovery stages, we came up with a few questions for them. The main questions were focused around what might distract them or put them off of joining the industry once they finish their course at university. And my video, this video that we found together, as I say, if there's no audio, it might not work. But if we just flick through to it, hopefully it'll play automatically, and we might get some audio if we're lucky. No, we've got nothing. But here, basically, if I try and improvise and talk over what's happening here, this was a video that the students found and put forward to me and said this best describes what we come across daily when we're trying to talk to professionals. And again, these are the students from the Milwaukee School of Engineering. So what's happening here is, in this video, it's quite funny at times. It's basically young people sat with their grandparents trying to look at old technologies, and as you can see here, we've got this record player that they're trying to work out how to use it. And my question that I was going to put forward when this video stopped was going to be if anyone can hazard a guess as to what the point was that the students from Milwaukee were trying to make. The point and behind this video was that, well, in fact, there's a continuation of this video as well, that the young people worked out the technology in the end, and actually there's an extension to this video that isn't included in this one, but it shows one of the young people showing his grandmother that she can actually do a whole load more things with others. one of these alarm clocks, and it says on there it only rings at 4 a.m. I've always had an alarm clock on my phone, so I can't remember things like that, but I think he'd worked out another way of getting any time that you want for this alarm clock to ring. So he was actually then teaching her things as she was trying to teach him about old technologies. And without blabbering on too much, the story behind this was that they were trying to say that when they go into the industry or they try and talk to these large companies that they're trying to get maybe an apprenticeship with or whatever, they say, well, we've used this at university, or we've had access to this and it works really well, and we can do what you're telling me I can do in half an hour or an hour, and you're telling me it's going to take a couple of days. And talking to them about new technologies, it was just kind of resisted, and they said, well, we do it this way, and you're coming into our way of working, and there was no trust there as to what they had learned, and they were trying to put forward and promote what they had done. So I won't play this the silent video for any longer. We'll go on and try and have a look. So we did a bit of a case study with these guys, with the students. So this is how it started. As I say, we had this WebEx. They don't mind me putting half of the professor's face on there. But this is how it started. It started on a WebEx, and we just had some conversations around what do they want from a software vendor when they're at university, and how might we be able to help them with their competition in the VDC. So we asked them this question: what could put graduates off joining the industry as well? And these were the three main points that came out of it. Competition between vendors. This was a really interesting one for me because my background has been sales side. So this was a very interesting one because, of course, we know that there's all different software vendors and we all compete with each other and we're all trying to put our solutions forward. But actually the conversation was around students don't want to get involved with that. They just want access to software so that they can do the best job in their course. They don't have thousands of pounds to go and spend on a software license, so why are we trying to compete? Why not just make it accessible to them? And I think they've been caught up in some politics of people trying to say, use this software because it's really good for that, use this software. And they actually just said, well, we just want to have access to everything and then make our own decision on that because we're quite switched on and we know what we're doing. That's why we're at university. Business can be daunting. This was we had a long conversation. In fact, a few of the students were debating with each other about this because some of them were very confident and some were saying, well, actually going into the industry is quite a daunting thing. It's quite a challenging thing. It's, I'm going to work with professionals that are a lot, quite often older than me and they're more experienced. So, how can I make an impact if I've just come out of university and I'm trying to, how can I make a difference? And they make it exciting. They're talking about this VDC challenge in Reno. They were all, there was a real buzz around the team because they'd been working for 6 months to a year preparing with, how were they going to deal with a quality assurance test where we were going to use Celebri? How are we going to deal with, coming up with an IFC model that we can have everything included in? We're going to choose a modelling package for that and whatever it is. So actually, they're saying make things exciting and allow us to just do what we want to do and get involved in these competitions, make it fun, and then we have this kind of real-world experience, fake real-world experience from these competitions that we go to. So we then looked at trying to address these issues. And so if I break them down here, and these are some quotes that we had, and I'll kind of summarise what they said. So the competition between vendors point that they came up with, we gave them access to everything that they wanted. And you can see there they said, for the VDC, we had access to a huge range of software to help us produce the best result possible. So they tested pretty much everything, came up with pros and cons lists of all of the software that they tried using, and then picked out the best ones for those. Because again, as I said before, they're intelligent people. They know what they're doing and wanted to, the point that Alison made earlier about the Revit just being like PowerPoint or whatever it is, they just pick it up as they go. So that was, taking away that competition and giving it to them was a really important thing to them. Business can be daunting. Again, I'm not going to try and read all of this out to you, but with these events that they go to, and so they've got a lot of other competitions that they go to, and their professors push them to go and do these events as well, to be involved in competitions. Going along to that, as you can see that they've said there, They can put problem solving to the test, and they can iron out as many mistakes as they want to and try different methods, and then they can go in and hopefully be a bit more trusted and say, I've got this on my CV. I've been and done this, and maybe we won, or as these guys came, I think top 5 out of however many schools took part. And they can put that forward and say, I've got experience of problem solving. And actually, in terms of, there's an additional point there, that we had some really positive feedback from the fact that we had actually gone to these students and said to them, tell us about what you're doing, tell us about how you use the Celebra and how you use Bluebeam in the competition. And they said that made a real difference, because we were going to the students and saying, put your stamp on this case study and tell us what you've been doing and what you found successful, rather than us just putting out case studies with businesses. Let's talk from the young people that are coming through and using these evolving technologies. And again, making it exciting. I quite like the bit that they put at the end here, which is saying being involved and being trusted is exciting. It's not always just the physical competitions, it's actually being a part of a wider thing. Really means something to students that are passionate about what they're doing, but maybe just a little bit daunted about where they're going. And this was just a question. I sent a case study question document to them. And again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I've highlighted the bottom part. And this was these questions weren't answered by professors or teachers or anything like that. This was answered by the students. And this line at the bottom that I've highlighted, where it says, "We are approaching a time where it is not possible to be a successful industry professional in this field without an understanding of new and evolving technologies." And I thought that was really key to what conversations we had with them, because it's all about technologies and what's coming through, and maybe bringing this into when they go into these apprenticeships or scholarships or whatever it is. When they go on to their next step, they can take this experience with them, and they can choose what suits where they go to. So back to the question of how we can make a difference as a vendor, and these are kind of, in my opinion, based on some of the work that we've been doing. Take away that competition. It's a point I've made a couple of times now. Enable and become accessible rather than selling. These are students, as I said, they don't have the thousands of pounds to go and buy the software, so let's just say, here it is, and we support you, and we want you to, do the best job you can with the projects and the work that you're doing, rather than saying, this is better than that, don't go to them, come to us, and all of that. They don't want to get involved in it. And young people are intelligent and tech savvy. I can't say that for myself so much, unless it's the PlayStation. I'm quite good at that. But let them make educated decisions and test things for us, get involved in educational projects, and let them do things and bring that experience with them. This is something that I'm pushing at the moment. As I said, we're kind of early stages, but have a student program for software. So hours at Celebra, but then push that out into the rest of the Nemetschek group if we can. So again, just making it accessible and giving that support. Promote the work that the students are doing. They said that it made a real difference being involved in a WebEx where they were being interviewed about what they had been doing. It makes it exciting for them, so put their stamp on it and promote what they're doing and make them feel important and wanted in the industry, so that they don't get distracted away and they stick to where they want to go with it. And work together and keep sharing ideas. Again, my opinion, but if groups like this and some of the ideas that are put out in these different conversations that we have really makes a difference. And pretty much, that's me.
I'm sorry, go there now. And can I call up the other three speakers, and we'll get straight into a Q&A. So some really fascinating presentations already this morning. We'll shorten the Q&A a little bit to try and definitely get you out of here by 10:30 as promised. So I won't ask any questions. We've got roving mics if we need them, though I think the acoustics is pretty good in here. So anybody got a question for any of our speakers thus far?
You're working in other than the UK at the moment and what successes you've had there?
Yeah, so I think let's just break down the UK first of all, because we should probably be talking about England, Scotland, different countries, because the curriculum system is very different in Scotland to England. So Scotland, for a start, with Curriculum for Excellence, looking at 3 to 18-year-olds, the whole progression is about getting children prepared for work. Fantastic curriculum model. And again, raising achievements in Scotland, same maths issues, same literacy, numeracy issues. So Scotland's been a real eye-opener for me, coming from a country, England, where everything is about targets and league tables points. To see Scotland thrive and getting children into the built environment is just fab. Look at Dubai, the built environment's going crazy over there, but they have the same problems as we do, in that, in Dubai, the built environment is seen as quite a low-level career choice. And yet, look around you, Burj Khalifa, the foundations for that thing, that was crazy, except that school children just see a big, glitzy, tall building and they don't see who's behind it. America's the same. I mean, we've actually contacted through the website saying, we need a BIM curriculum in America. We think this is it. Can we put it into our students? But they don't start until they're 16 years old in America with this kind of curriculum. So the boys, it's a school of boys, boys. They've introduced the Hotel Underground competition for 16-year-olds, and they're doing amazing things. And the feedback's been, this is the BIM curriculum that America needs. So I think it's, what we hear, what we've all been talking about is a global issue. It's not an English issue around perception of construction, around progression and around getting our children in and the future of technology and so on. It's a global issue. Every developed country that you talk to, just had the Vietnamese over. Vietnamese came to Salford University, met some of our students from St Ambrose. They were like, you do this with kids? Oh my God, this is crazy. So, we're going to look at Vietnam. I'm over in Lithuania at the end of June. Lithuania's launching DEC for their students in 3 schools as a pilot.
Just to mention that, actually,
Yeah.
the pilot idea that, we work with, say, 3 schools.
Yeah.
Normally teachers that would have a passion, interest in this area, and that's maybe one way you can sort of demonstrate the value of it to other schools.
Yeah, you have to start with a pilot. If you don't have a pilot, because the main thing with education is mapping to the very traditional and national curriculum. So the way we work with DEC is basically saying, okay, well, that's the system in Scotland. Let's map the subjects. Let's map the outcomes. Let's map the skills and the education. Not just, skills not post-16. Let's start with skills lower down the curriculum. So it has to fit. Schools have targets. They're measured. It has to fit.
Anybody else with a question? Or comment? Gentleman here.
First one's just a point, just for Roisin. The stats that you put up at one point, compared 2007 against today, I think we should be comparing probably the 12% or the optimum where we should be against today, because we have a risk of always looking back at this kind of extreme outliner that we were at. My second thing, I suppose, is a question for the panel. Is there a need for sort of a central organisation or structure in, let's say, Ireland to look after the construction industry? Because we have architects looking after themselves, engineers looking after themselves, and there isn't enough joined-up thinking. Is there, and could that help with education and getting people into the business of construction as well?
Yeah, I certainly think it would serve a very useful role in in coordinating activities.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of professional bodies. I never get them in the same room. It's really frustrating. So when I think of architectural technology, it's a really, really great example. Work very, very closely with the professional body in the Northwest. Really, really active, particularly around people like Anne Vanner at UCLan and so on. Really, really dynamic, but nothing else in the rest of the country. If I look at CIBSE, Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, CIBSE in Yorkshire have been a fantastic region, really supported our schools. It happens nowhere else. The RIBA. Okay, so the RICS, helpful, occasionally. RIB, I was trying to make a point, nothing. You know, it's almost like they're architects, so they don't work with the built environment. And it's probably the same in universities. You see the same kind of silo approach. Architecture sits outside built environment. Get everyone in the same room. So yeah, I absolutely think you need a central government for that.
Two comments that I'd make. Firstly, I think you're absolutely right. The nature of economic statistics, that you're always looking in the past. I think what we do need to be careful, and it raises an important issue, is if we look at the growth past and look at the projections going forward, we're very soon going to reach that 12% allegedly sustainable level of construction industry contribution, depending on the forecasters that you're looking at. That could be as soon as 2022. Where we do meet that 12%. And my question is there anybody going to put the brakes on it or to slow it down such that we don't make the mistakes of the past? So I think your comment is well made. I focus primarily on the historic, which is, you know, the nature of the actual statistic, but we do need to look forward as well in order that we don't overheat and suffer the mistakes of the past. The second issue that you've raised there is in terms of a collaborative. I think the fact that there's so many stakeholders in the room today is a very positive step in terms of that. But yes, I do think that we need to do this, particularly, and as the focus of today is on the skills shortage and labour market issues, we need to look at that, because as we can see, there are even reports and information coming out from so many different sources, all of which are really, really valuable. But perhaps what I was alluding to earlier on is in that information and in that market intelligence, perhaps there is a need to come together even to determine more accurately the quantum of the problem from the various stakeholders. Maybe we need to come together to put a figure that dare I say, not an economic forecast, but actually coming from industry to say, what do you actually need? How many people? What level do you need? And then from the third level perspective, go, how are we going to be able to deliver that and look at innovative solutions, not only third level, but second level and primary schools, in order that we have it sufficient and a sustainable level of throughput into the construction industry. So I do think from both of your comments are very, very valid and important for consideration today. So thank you.
Anybody else? Question or comment? No? Okay. Well, we'll move on then. And thank you very much. That was short and sweet. So next up, we're going to have Robert Moore and Oliver Dawkins.
Yes, we do.
Well, I've asked videos things.
No, it's okay. We'll
be able to manage, will you? Okay. So just to introduce Robert and Oliver. Robert is Robert is an information manager and works on the client side in the public sector with a range of development agencies. And he's been advising on both managerial and technical requirements for IT and information management across the entire development. And he also serves on two numerous dimensions, I would say, in committees and workshops. And Oliver is a data and training coordinator on the Build the City Dashboard project, which is an SFI funded initiative based in the National Centre for Geocomputation at New University. And Oliver's research interests involve the use of gaming technology and mixed reality interfaces in order to visualize real-time data from IoT devices. And they're going to talk to us about a 3D data pack and how data can be used to shape the future of the city. Sound.
No, it's Hi, good morning all, and thanks for getting the video working, and I weren't looking forward to singing or something like that for this. So anyway, just to start off, it's me and Oliver here who's going to give the presentation, and I will go into the video now in a second. So, so hopefully that kind of gave you a bit of a flavour of what the hack is Brilliant, thanks. That's the last video we have to show. Hopefully it's plain sailing now. So anyway, so that was just really about the hack and what we might want to achieve is to try and get new uses for existing data. So really, why were we interested in the hack? Why was Ben Bowman interested in the hack? We need to start conversations. We need to start people talking. We need to start people talking between the construction industry and the IT industry. Like we need the data makers, the data users, the data owners, the product vendors to all start having a conversation together to see what we can do. Why do we need to start talking? Data is just data. So what we need to do is we need to investigate new ways of using this existing data. We need to see if there are new products that can be made or secondary uses from the data that's already been created from the construction industry, and what kind of licenses we need to use. And these kind of conversations need to be had, and the hack is all about starting these conversations and getting people talking about this. And we need to be able to have better conversations. We need to have well-structured information so we can understand how better to use this data to facilitate app developers and product software vendors and all that to understand how we can use the existing design, construction, and operational data for another purpose that can provide new value to the owners of the data. So I think our CEO actually kind of summed up what really was about the Great Drone Development Agency. Within the Great Drone Development Agency, we're gathering quite a lot of data. So we need to make sure that we're actually gathering the right kind of data so that's ready to use for any future uses that we can see that will come down the line to the Great Drone campus. So that's why it's important for us to be involved in this kind of event. So just Oliver, come in and
Thank you. So all the buildings on the data training coordinator for the Building CIT Dashboard project, we're responsible for the Dublin and Cork City dashboards, which essentially give a high-level informational view of the city based on available open data. So as part of our research, we've gone beyond this and started looking at how 3D interfaces, 3D data can be used to assist both planners in the city and citizens as well. So my colleague Gareth Young has been out and he's been talking to planners across the country. In the meantime, we've been prototyping these kinds of three-dimensional planning tools, gives you a range of functionalities, incorporating GIS data sets, looking at kind of visual uses that these kind of models can have for planners. So a lot of it at the moment in the tools that we're looking at is just visual aspects. But what we want to do is go beyond the visual aspects and start looking at different forms of analysis that we can perform in the built environment. So this, in fact, is just a very quick visualisation of an early version of the data that is being released as a hackathon, and it is actually intended to be released openly after that hackathon is complete. And here you can see we've got a pedestrian model. I really wish I brought the video now so you can actually see the individuals moving around. You can start asking questions like, well, what happens if we close off the road when this event is on? How does that change not just how this part of the city is functioning, but what impact that has in other areas of the city? And so this kind of 3D data set allows us to ask those questions and look at the wider urban fabric. And it gives us the opportunity to look at different scales. So we can look at the city from the first person kind of virtual reality perspective. We can take a step back and take these high level views and see patterns across the city. And so what we're hoping is that through the release of this data set, we're going to be able to let other people help us ask and answer those questions. And so the hackathon that's been planned for the 10th to the 12th is intended to be a very inclusive event. So we have bin data sets available, but we also have this wider 3D data set available that might be suitable for a wider range of sort of users and app developers. So we're hoping it's going to be a very exciting event with lots of new use cases coming out, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I think that's us.
Well, I was just actually just to finish off here as well. Sorry, so the event on the 10th, there's an opening launch event on the 10th. I think we can take a photograph of that. We get to use the QR code to go to the Eventbrite page so you can register for that event, which you're all welcome to come, and that will be a location where you can start these conversations between people that want to use the data and understand how to use it. And also we're very lucky here that we've got quite a lot of support from a lot of companies, and we've got a lot of vendors here that are actually coming together and trying to help us out to see how we can use some of this data. That's it. Thank you very much. Any questions, I suppose, just before we go? Will we do questions now? Yeah, if there's any questions there? Unfortunately not. Yeah, unfortunately not. The entry's closed last Friday. But do come along and get involved.
How many teams have you got on?
I'm not too sure of the exact number. I think it's around 10 teams. And then we have some individuals that's planning to work.
It's a common challenge to run the ball in given.
Well, what the challenge is to come up with uses of the data that we given. So it's kind of, we know the data that we have, and the challenge is to provide the public with that there's a tangible benefit to the public from using this data. So the data sets that we gave, as Oliver said, was the citywide model of the documents, but we've also provided IFCs. There's an IFC that's going to go in the building. We actually do expect more IFCs to go on the site in the next few days, but we've also gave them direction to already open data, IFC open data.
And was it Newton University that was successful in winning the bid to develop? Was there a call by Dublin Council?
Yeah.
Is that
we weren't involved in the sort of, the tendering process. We didn't make the tender. So really, we've had the opportunity to prototype with some early data sets, but the tender process was separate. So really, we're coming to it as another user as well.
One of the questions. Just all local teams, or have you got a UK team?
I actually don't. Oh, I'm sorry, we do.
Is your digital written there? Are they?
Yes, we're not a team there. We're talking to them for advice. There is a team coming to you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much for your time. I hope to see you on Friday.
Thanks very much, folks. So our final speaker before Alan closes off the event is Myron Cawley, who doesn't need any introduction at this event. Engineering at TUD. And his PhD focused on using BIM to demonstrate how early integration of facilities management professionals into the design team can result in reducing life cycle costs. And he's the pioneering postdoctoral researcher on the CitA May BIM Innovation Capability Programme in Ireland. So Barry's going to give us an update on the current status of BIM in Ireland, data donation, and Barry up to the podium. Barry can then hand straight over to Alan to close. So thank you very much for attending the event.
Thanks, Lee. You're in for a good presentation today. Actually, Corbin no pressure. So the whole idea with these talks is just to give an understanding or an update of, I suppose, where we are in 2019 to 2017, where Alan, myself, and the CitA team, Professor Roger West, are hoping to publish the 2019 report. So what we're doing is offering snippets along the way of that report. One of the things that we've been working with is creating a BIM forum where we've invited professional institutes to nominate someone and come together into a collective grouping. Now, most of these institutes are talking with each other and they are interacting, but this just offers another channel to do that. So every month or before every CitA event, we have a meeting and everyone comes together and it gives an update on where they are with regards to their particular institute. So I suppose the most interesting updates that came back from meeting 3 is that the BIM Regions will have its first event, which will be held in TU Dublin's Bolton Street campus, and that will be looking at how the second year MSc and Applied BIM and Management students have used Autodesk's new 360 generation suite of cloud software to collaborate in their project. So anyone that's interested in that should come along because it's a real strong demonstration of what Autodesk are doing with the 360 platform. Other interesting updates came from the NSSI, who have released a accreditation. So we actually have a certification now being piloted, which is looking at a external certification for ISO 19650. Public sector BIM are working and offering technical advice to the CSG, the Construction Sector Group. These are going to be responsible for the rollout and implementation of BIM. So this group has been tasked with delivering BIM to the Irish public sector. And public sector group will be working with these in order to advise important information. The ROI, as we all know, released a very successful BIM pack, and that continues to get momentum, and they'll be releasing a phase 2 of that, which includes a development matrix. And another kind of significant, update is that a consortium of different industry bodies, including Engineers Ireland, have worked together to provide information to present to CSG of what this digital centre of excellence should do, where it should be housed, and what it's going to offer. So that's kind of in the pipeline at the moment. So we're all working together, and there's a lot of different initiatives going on. Another element that we're after finishing up is we did a maturity matrix, a maturity understanding where Ireland was in 2017. So we're after updating that. And we used models that have been established throughout 20-25 different countries through Dr. Mohammed Kassim and Abdullah Sukar. So we've applied these again to understand where we are in 2017 to 2019 to see if the so-called Irish public sector mandate, as well as the MBS roadmap, have had an impact. So if we look at 2017 to 2019, what this model looks at is technology, process and policy across 3 different elements: modelling, collaboration and integration. So to explain what 2017 means, that if we look at the technology side, is that we had advancements in modelling technologies, collaborating technologies were quite good, and integration technologies we were okay. But when it came to process and policies and marshal these, we were quite poor. However, as we can see in 2019, there's a rise across all of these different diffusion areas, meaning that our policies and our processes are starting to come in line now, slightly, not wonderfully, but slightly, for what we can offer the technology side. This model looked at what would constitute the key elements of a successful mandate. And we are still more or less where we are in 2017, but we've seen a rise when it comes to objectives and milestones. as well as regulatory framework. So this is obviously a response from the roadmap and as well as the Irish kind of mandate. And further to that, ISO 19650 has helped us kind of improve when it comes to our standardised parts and deliverables. So these slides will be made available. So some of them are quite text heavy for the purpose of that. You can digest them and disseminate them further afterwards. And more updates from each one of the groups that I didn't get a chance to go into because it's a good bit to cover. What this looked at is who is the industry, who's the leaders? Is it kind of top down or bottom up or middle out? And what we're still finding is that it's still middle out, meaning that the people driving this are mainly the larger contractors. We're still kind of waiting for the government to step in and take it from them, but what we have at the moment is the main leaders hasn't changed from the likes of your large contractors that we all know who they are at this stage. This one looked at where we were with the government, what approach did they have. So for example, I looked at is it a passive, assertive or active approach. Ultimately where we were back in 2017 it was completely passive. The government made aware, they encouraged and they observed. If we look at the UK, it would have been assertive, prescribe, enforce, control. So the ideal one would be to have a mixture of assertive and active. Where we are now is pretty much still the same. However, instead of a kind of a passive make aware approach, we're moving towards an educate. So there is a move from the government or the public sector to try and educate instead of just saying, look, this has been okay. They are trying to kind of make aware, and we can see that through the hackathon being organised by Rob and Mary. So there are fantastic kind of initiatives ongoing in this kind of space. And the final one looked at who are the leaders. And what we had in here was, for example, even though we have all these, the mandate and the roadmap, the policy leaders are still seen as the educational institutes. So we have policy makers, but who the industry is turning to is the education institutes in order to kind of upskill and educate, because they're seen as, I suppose, the people that are responsible for ensuring that the policy is met. When we look at the technology side, we see there's been a big jump for the technology developers who now have a good share of the market with technology advocates, as well as developers and service providers. And when it comes to community of practice to do with policies, we can see now that the construction organisations are the ones leading in that particular institute, as well as certain institutes as well in regards to processes. This is an educational kind of area, so what we did was we went back out and we started talking again with all the different colleges, the different heads of courses, see has there been an update to 2017 to 2019. Roisin and Mark were after discussing here today the skills gap and the current issues that we have. And then Alice is after going into how she has managed to make construction more attractive now to people within secondary and primary level schools. Digital technologies, building information modelling, has that opportunity to make an impact in the diversification issues, as well as an impact in the attractiveness towards not just primary and secondary school students, but also to the current industry, make it more interesting to people. So I've been just interested to see, we had a fantastic offer in 2017. Are the education institutes still in this particular game, and are they still offering it? And without a doubt, from the conversations I had, there's been a real continued drive in this from the education institutes. If I look at some of them, and once again I'm not going to go into all of them, CIT Cork are moving to offer a major level 8 qualification in this. TU Dublin's MSc and Applied BIM continues to be one of the most sought after programs within the country. It's the only level 9 master's program. It's recently won the Irish Construction Excellence Award. On top of that, there's maybe 100 students between the professions between the different 3 years. There's also a number of research initiatives going on at the moment. One is the BIMSER project, led by Dr. Albert Beaton, where we're working together on delivering condensed, bite-sized training opportunities to the whole supply chain, just-in-time training online. The Galway May Institute of Technology also has a very highly sought-after higher diploma in building information modelling. They've also integrated BIM into a number of modules across their graduates, as TU Dublin has done as well. And they've recently launched the BIM Futures Design Development Pilot and Professional Development Framework for students, academic staff, and industry stakeholders. Carlo has 20 students completing their level 9 certificate in BIM. If we go down and look at, I'm after talking with Mark there earlier, Mark informed me that he's after taking the maddening step of trying to organise 250 students next year across multiple programs into an integrated project, which is going to be fantastic because it'll be able to so the quantity surveyors, the civil engineers, construction managers, what everyone else is doing, and give a better understanding of each discipline. Down here, so look, it'll be all up in here for further kind of understanding. And Waterford IT have just finished a pilot project, BRE, where all the students coming through are also getting BRE accreditation. So there's a lot going on, and they've won the skills, winner and world skills competition they're entering now in Russia. So as we can see, there is significant movement in the education sector. And the reason for this is because it's a market, because they see that this is an opportunity to upskill and help with the construction sector gap. So it's fantastic to see it, but bringing it back down to today, with Mark and Alison, we do need to do an awful lot more to get into the core of it. And that's realistically where we need to go and show the attractiveness of what this industry can offer to students coming into secondary school. Where I hope to discuss on the next update is that myself, Alan, and Professor Roger West are writing a paper titled Centres of Excellence for Digital Instruction Lessons for Ireland's Construction Industry. So we're going to be in contact with a number of different innovation centres across the world. And what we're hoping to find out from them is what are the common themes that constitute a successful innovation centre. And then we can feed this information back into the industry and feed this to the groups that are kind of going for the CFG, and we can all use this in order to kind of ensure that whatever digital construction centre, wherever it's housed, obviously kind of follows some key themes that be successful. And finally, we have the results of the MBS CitA survey. They'll be released now in due time. 116 different disciplines. Some of the key findings is that BIM is predominantly used in the health sector, very poorly within the transport and support infrastructure. When I say poorly, it's still 50%, which is quite good, but compared to 92% in the health. A lot of people are saying that they're quite confident in their BIM skills, and some of the main barriers include lack of in-house expertise, no client demand, and a lack of training. One of the interesting things to get back was asked, who would you turn to in order for information in regards to building information modelling? And there were 15 or 16 different solutions put across, and the ones that came back out of the top four included MBS, Construction IT Alliance, Building Smart, and TU Dublin. So we can see in here that this is really interesting results, and we'll be publishing this now in the very near future. So that's the update for May, and I look forward to being back here next month for thank you.
Did you just say Waterford IT won the BIM World Skills?
So they won the Irish skills and then we're going to the world skills in Russia.
Very good.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for this morning and for attending and to the speakers. I suppose events like this and topics like this that are perhaps not of particular importance to some companies, the football might be a little smaller. But for me, it makes me even more determined to focus on this issue of digitalization and attracting the next generation of talent into the sector. So despite the quantity of football, we had superb speakers this morning. And the quality of the messages can be, I want to try and sum them up, because there's so many lessons. We want to take lessons away from this morning. So, first of all, thank you, Dee. Busy lady, I know. Thank you so much for your time this morning, for taking the time out, for helping us to manage the event on time. Thank you so much. So, thank you to Dee. And thank you to my colleague, Roisin. And you can see that word incentivization came up. Barry had it, so it is a word. And I suppose the takeaway I get from Roisin, I suppose, is the reaffirmation, the concerning message that there's a pipeline problem and there needs to be intervention. And incentivization is one of those interventions. But I suppose that four-stage model of knowledge, collaboration, innovation, incentivization
is a good model. And that perhaps if there's a strategy to be put together to try and address, I suppose, productivity issues in construction, which includes the concern about resources, that's a model that we'll looked at. So Roisin, thank you so much. I think you did a great job. And to Alison, what can I say, Alison? MBE. Fantastic. I think we need to talk to Alison and Class Bureau and set up the Irish Class Bureau as quickly as possible, even if it's by way of an MOU or some sort of partnership, and put together a pilot in time for next September, October. We should do that. I know you met the CIF last night, and I think everyone will welcome that. So we should talk about that. And thank you so much. And it's funny, 2015. My God, is that long ago? 2014. Well, those kids were on the same stage as who? Chuck Eastman and Raffles Sykes. Two of the biggest names in the world of digital construction. Chuck Eastman probably is the grandfather of the whole thing. And they almost won the competition. Because I remember when we were sitting down going through the results, the Slovenian team were worried that they were going to lose, because they were to a group of 14-year-olds at the time. And but it was fantastic. And I'm just so sorry it's been taking so long to have you back in Ireland. And, okay, so thank you, Alison, and I hope we see a lot more of you and we see the DEC initiative in Ireland up on lights in the next 6 months. So, also to Mark. Mark is an external examiner in our college. I think this is your last year with us, Mark, but you've been great and great passion around the whole BIM. Why couldn't you use the word BIM craft? Was there a you have BIM craft and BE craft? Was there a...
We wanted to embrace the built environment.
Yes.
So we decided to call it built environment information.
Very good. Yeah.
To embrace that engineering.
Yeah.
The whole
well, I know when talking to the Scottish Future Trust yesterday, who were in charge of the BIM program in Scotland, that they're working in a number of schools here. So again, perhaps it's a sub-initiative here with Class of Your Own, that BIM craft could be part of that solution. So thank you so much for that. And to Harry, where's Harry? Well done. Harry, you talked about, you spoke very well about your work with Milwaukee, but the idea that, this competitive nature between vendors. So what we'd like to see here in Ireland is a number of the tech companies coming together, cohesively together, supporting some sort of schools program in 2019-20. That would be great. And of course, perhaps Mr. Dr. Nemechek could come to Ireland at some stage and talk about that. So we had some great speakers this morning, and of course to Robert, good luck with the 3D hackathon, and I hope to be there myself, and also to Oliver for his contribution, and to my good friend and colleague Barry. Where's he going? Barry McCauley, who's doing some great work. The work that Barry is doing is very important. The idea that we're trying to keep the show on the road, trying to sort of act as a kind of almost a clearinghouse for BIM, because there's so many different silos going on. So as the CSG are looking at various aspects, I really believe that the government needs to do something quite quickly now. And I believe that perhaps a solution to developing this roadmap further is some sort of interim solution, 6-12-month project to try and maintain the momentum whilst the CSG are looking at models for future centres of excellence. It's very important to remember that in the roadmap it talks about facilitating centre of excellence. It doesn't talk about forming one. And so it's important that that's taken forward. So just before I finish up and go through a few slides to thank other people, it's just to say that we are committed to this programme, the CitA Digital Transformation Programme. This came out of, I suppose, a lot of consultation between industry partners, educators, government, and so on. So we're almost halfway through. We've looked at infrastructure, we've looked at modern methods of construction, and now we're looking at shortage of skills. So we're moving on now next month to BIM certification, and thankfully the NSCI agreed to lead that. So if any of you, I can see a few of you out here, if any companies out here are BIM certified, hands up. Okay, so we're looking for a few case studies for June for companies who went through the process of securing BIM certification, what it means to the company, the process, and so on. Now, perhaps commercial advantage isn't the right word here, because larger companies need their smaller supply chains to be BIM ready and BIM certified. So if you're willing to come and speak as an engineering company, as a construction company, as an architectural company, and you've gone through that process, why not share that with us in June? And talk about how it's made a difference to your business. Have you won more work? Have you employed more people? Have you exported your services internationally as a result of your certification? So please come back to us. I can see a few companies here in the room. Mercury are here. No. Huh? No, okay. So this will be important. So listen, our next event will take place in May, and this is going to be a tech trend series. This is the event series that's starting to gain momentum. 3 tech companies are coming to speak in the Workbench Centre in Grand Canal Square, and these are the 3 of the most exciting techs I've seen come forward, and these are changing property and construction sectors. So one of them is a clearinghouse, to secure funding for tech starts and so on and so forth. So if you're in the region of the 15th of May, please join us in the Grand Canal Square. We're also starting to get the eastern bid, the BIM regions moving, so we have an event coming up on the 30th of May. This is taking place in TU Dublin, and this will be sort of, I suppose, celebrating more the collaborative projects that the students are working on, but also hearing from Ditech and from Leica on developments that they're making in their companies. So the BIM gathering is taking place, as you know, in Galway. We've got, I think, 45 to 48 paper submissions. We've gone back to most of the people that submitted. Apologies if we haven't got back to everyone at this stage. And I believe it's mid-June when the papers are due. So we're just starting to build the keynote speakers. We're trying to get that sort of diversity mix and also the international mix, so there'll be more announced on that. So thank you again. I think it was an important morning, important messages, and we're going to keep focusing on this, and we hope to see you all in June. Thank you so much.